Alright, hello guys, this is Maya 106 and today we are going to cover textures and texturing. So we will start with this texture. And last time, or a couple of weeks back, we learned how to prepare models so this texture could fit on an amphora or a vase, for example. But a texture is so much more than just a color. To get a better understanding of that, we have to first take a look of how an object is actually displayed on the object itself in 3D. So we'll just take a look at this, I would say, final image of 3 vases, and we're going to we'll analyze it a bit, what kind of work needs to get, or what sort of time you need to spend to get this image done, and what sort of textures you need. Because if we take a look at this earlier texture, this of course gives us the color of the object, but not the structure of the object, or the shininess, or the I don't know, wrinkly little details that you can see on this image. So we're going to start with this. This is how this very scene looks in Maya, in the Maya viewport. And as you can see, it isn't nearly as detailed as the final image, or so it seems. So here the magic of texturing comes into play. So first we have to look at how this shot is basically composed, or what other work needs to be done on that shot, or on that frame. So apart from the textures, there's of course one thing that has to be done as well, which is rendering. And rendering basically means the calculation of all the lights and light sources. So we have the lighted version right here. We're going to cover the whole lighting part next time when we do some rendering, but today we will just finish it off with this is how this image looks when it is lighted and there are no textures applied whatsoever. So the first texture, of course, we need is our color texture, which is also called diffuse or albedo, and or albedo. And if we assign that to our vases, we can see, well, it doesn't look very good, does it? So if you compare it to this and that, it sucks. So we need something we need something else. We need something to give those vases some structure, or some, I don't know, some material you can feel, not only a texture or a color. So here another texture map I'm going to explain is the bump map or the normal map. And first, these are two bump mapping techniques. The bump map on the left is a little bit older than the normal map, which has been developed only, I would say, 10 years back, or maybe it's the newer technique. Both do essentially the same, which is faking geometry when the model is not well modeled in so high resolution. So as you can see, all those little wrinkles and some well, no structure is perfect, or no surface is perfect. So all those little surface imperfections and the lines you can see, of course, also some sort of geometry, but they are dependent on the texture. They are produced with the texture. And if we apply these textures, what we get is this, which already looks a lot nicer. So as you can see, The vases now have some structure where they well, need to have them. As you can see, those lines. This isn't really geometry we have created or that is on the model. It is geometry which is faked with this bump or normal map. So with these maps, we basically trick the render engine to well, have some structure where there really isn't any. There's another thing we can do, which is assigning a displacement map. And a displacement map looks similar to these ones right here, especially to the left one. And what this does is it actually produces physically geometry in the rendering process, resulting in very realistic bump maps, so to speak, but for most of the times this is not very necessary. But here we are with this image, and I don't know, I feel like there's still something missing. The models are not very, well, they are completely diffuse. There isn't any shininess whatsoever, and of course we could just apply a gloss value on that. But we also have a texture for this, which is called gloss map or reflection map. And what this map does, it basically tells the render engine which parts of the object or which part of the material should be reflective and which should be not reflective. So the white parts of that image, or the whiter parts, are very reflective and the darker parts are non-reflective. It's a grayscale map. And if we apply that, we can see, bada, we have our final image of those three vases looking, well, way better than just having a color assigned, as you can see here. Okay. But there's still one question that needs to be answered, which is, okay, first, there are many more texture maps. So we covered the gloss and spec map. There's also opacity maps, for example, when an object is transparent to some degree, like a leaf. If you have a plane and you want to have a leaf texture on this, you have the rest of the leaf is, or the rest of the plane is of course transparent, or the leaf is visible, so you would stencil that out with an opacity map. There's also SSS, subsurface scattering maps. That's how they're called. If you have a material like human skin, or something which is something where light can shine through, this is called subsurface scattering, and there are also maps for that. And there are also transmission maps if you have water or glass, something which is transparent but have some sort of IOR or Fresnel value on it. I'm going to explain that later. So there's still something missing. An essential question is, how do the textures get on the model? Wouldn't it be nice if we could just, inside of Maya, paint all the textures on the model? Well, there is an answer for you. Maya isn't the very best in doing so. There are a few options which, well, do not really work, but there are some nuances. Maya can do that, but overall speaking, Maya is not a texturing program. There are alternatives, however. The first one is Mari. Mari is industry standard developed by the Foundry. I've worked with this program in the past. It is almost as bad as Maya, stability-wise, and it is very expensive if you want to use it, because there is no educational license whatsoever. So we don't really get a license for that. There's Substance Painter, which is the more or less most used program already in the industry, as Mari is so bad. Substance Painter is basically the new rising star on the texturing sky. And there's also Quixel. Quixel is a plugin for Photoshop, but if you have Photoshop, it's very good and almost as good as Substance Painter. And it's not very expensive. I think it's like 80 bucks or something. Okay. For better demonstration. Ooh. God, I downloaded this video off YouTube, and well, it's basically a speed paint of Substance Painter, and yeah, it's very nice to look at. You can see the interface is now we're going to jump into Maya. I would start by one of the objects I have included or I have uploaded in your Moodle course. I've included in your materials. You can take any objects you would like as long as it has some textures. I will take the glasses object because I think that explains a lot of things that are interesting to us, texturing wise. So inside of our folder we have our glasses texture, the color texture, we have our gloss map, we have our normal map, reflection map, transmission map, and the objects itself. We have FBX and OBJ. Both are common file formats for 3D objects. You can choose either one of these. I will take the OBJ, and we can see that it is very, very small. I'm just going to scale it up so we can see it better. And if we now would assign some textures, we wouldn't really be able to see it. So what we are going to do is we are going to jump right into rendering. I'm just going to explain the basic features because we really need only the basic features right now. For a later process, for a later for I would say in-depth rendering, which we will cover in the next session. All right. So Maya as standard has, if we go, okay, up here are some buttons, and there's one with a little wheel on it, which is the render settings. And up here we can choose the render layer, just keep it at master layer, and renderer using, we're going to use Arnold Renderer. Arnold Renderer is a very common offline renderer, which is also used for movie productions, etc. It was bought by Autodesk a few years ago and has now been standard in all Maya releases. All right, we're going to select that. We don't have to change anything else. What we will have to do, however, is to have some sort of lighting. So for that, we are going to go inside of the Arnold tab right here. And right here, the fourth symbol is Skydome Light. And we're just going to click on that. And if we now click on that little IPR, which is live rendering, we can see that we have an image. And we cannot really toggle around in that view. Sadly, we have to keep the mouse in here so we can toggle around and see our objects, which is, yeah, just a pair of glasses. And our sky at the moment is pretty white, and we want to change that. So inside of our if we click on our objects and go to the attribute editor, we should see this set of features, and right here we have color, and we can give it any color we would like, but I think neither one of those looks very good, so we are going to apply a texture, and we're going to do that by clicking on this little button right here, and we are presented with this window, and here we're going to select file because we want to have a file texture like a PNG, JPEG, whatever, and not a procedural one as we also were presented with. And here on this little yellow folder icon, we can click on there and just select our sky map, which I have also included in your materials. 1 second, I'm going to take that object, or take that file, and now if we tumble around we can see we have the sky and some trees with it, and our object is now lighted in a natural, physically correct condition using this texture map as a background, using that sky texture as a background. But I think it is too dark, so I'm going to change it. If we scroll down in here, or we could also click on our sky again, and if we scroll down we have something which is called exposure. We click on that and I'm going for 1.5, and now our object is a bit well, brighter. And something I would like to do as well, you don't have to do that, but I think it looks better and gives you a better sense of materials, is if we go into the rendering tab, which is right here. The second thing is called a Directional Light, which essentially is a sun. We can take that, scale that up. Scaling doesn't change a thing because all the settings are inside of our object itself. Like if we scale it, the light doesn't get stronger, but the rotation does change, as you can see. Well, I have to adjust the exposure, maybe up to 2 or 1.5, and we can see we have some sort of sunlight. And at the moment the shadows are very, very harsh, so I'm going to adjust the angle. As I said, you don't have to remember this all, because I will explain that in a later video and course. And I'm going to take 10 and or type in 10, and now the shadows are much smoother. And I could also, while I'm at it, take out Directional Light, change the color a bit using color temperature, and give it some sort of evening yellowish tint to fit the sky map in the background, the well, sky texture. So at the moment we have one problem, which is well, our object at the moment doesn't have a real material. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on that object. By the way, inside your live editor you have a little stop symbol right here. If we click on that, nothing changes, and it doesn't the view doesn't update, which might save a lot of energy on your machine. We select that object, right click on it and select new material, and here we are presented with a lot of options, and we are going to choose, of course, Arnold, and here are also a lot of options, and we are going to go for AI standard surface. There's also a standard hair and whatever, but if you want to render hair or something specific, like I don't know, an ocean, or for example, I don't know, something which is combined of multiple materials, you can choose that. But for us, it's just standard surface. We click on that and we can see that this material is now selected. We have our standard surface, which we don't have to care about. All we have to care about is our standard Surface 2 material, and we can change the name of that, change it to maybe glasses. And if I apply our render engine again and maybe change the color. So inside of the glasses material we have, if I would just minimize everything, we would just have the base at the moment. Base just defines the diffuse color, so if I change that to maybe some sort of blue, I don't know, we can see that the object changes as well. But we have, of course, some textures for it. So what we are going to do is we are going to click on that little object, on that little symbol right here. Click File again, because we have a file that we want to add. Click on that little button, and now we can navigate to our glasses, which are here. And here we can see we want, of course, the glasses cull for color, and we change that. And here we go. Our glasses now have some color on it. And it already doesn't look so bad, because what Arnold does automatically is apply a shine on your object. So our how do you call that, glasses case is very shiny, as well as the glasses itself. But we of course don't want that for everything on that object. So what we are going to do is we are going to go to our glasses, and instead of the attribute editor, on the very last page we have our glasses material. And what we can now do is we can go to Specular, which is the next tab. And if we take a look at our object, we can change the, well, first weight. Weight explains how much reflective this object is. So if I set weight to 0, it becomes non-reflective at all, and 1 is very reflective. Color explains the color of the reflection. So if we change that to green, we can see that only the reflection turns green. But we don't want that as well. We of course want a white reflection. Roughness is a very interesting part, because if I change the roughness to 1, we can see that our object is basically a mirror. And if I set that to 1, we can see that there is basically no reflection. So change it to, I don't know, 0.5, we can see that the glossiness of our case changes. So 0.2 is a little bit more like a mirror. 0.15 maybe might be the correct value for now. IOR is also a very interesting parameter, as it explains the index of refraction on your object, which is something physical. You can Google that for everything there is. So if you want to have the index of refraction for your I don't know, glass of water, you can Google IOR for glass, and then it will give you 1.55, I think, or 45. So if I change that, we can see what changes. It is the reflection dependent on the angle we look at it. That best explains it. But I would leave that at 1.4, 1.5-ish for this, as there isn't really an index of refraction for glasses suitcases. Another thing we could do is we can go to transmission. Okay, we're going to do that later. First I'm going to explain how we would apply that specular texture, because there are now some problems, because not all render engines, I'm going to close that for now, not all render engines work the same. So the textures are standardized, but the render engines are not. So if we would now apply our texture for our objects, we would have to invert our glossiness texture, and we cannot do that inside the file node. So what we are going to do, we are going to go to advanced mode, advanced texturing mode, which is by opening up the Hypershade. Hypershade is the texturing or material editor of Maya. So what we are going to do, we write to render settings, we click on this little sphere right here, which opens up the Hypershade. It looks like this. Okay, now it is. I've already closed all these other windows. We don't need those. You can keep them, I don't care. And right here, if I click on our objects and go to right-click Graph Materials on Material Selection, we can see that here is our material. And it might look a bit confusing for you right now. What we have at the very front is the AI standard surface group. We need that group to assign our material to our object, but that's pretty much all you need to know about it. This one is assigned to the object, and your material that you have just created, which is called glasses, as you can see, is connected to our surface group. So as you can see here, we have base, color, diffuse, roughness, specular, whatever. These are pretty much, all these dots are pretty much all the options which are right here. So as we can see inside of our color tab, we have, which is called in the graph editor base color, we have a little line which is going to our glasses texture. A texture consists of two nodes. First is a place 2D texture, which essentially tells the program how the texture is going to apply it on the model. We can keep that at default for most of the times, and glasses itself is or the texture itself is right here. If we click on that inside of the attribute editor, we can see it's where we put in our texture path, so the texture gets loaded in. And if we click on glasses, we can see that the material gets selected. So this is how it works. What we are going to do is we are going to add a texture to our specular roughness. The roughness, as I said, controls how reflective that object is, so either a mirror or non-reflective at all. So we have a texture which is called the gloss texture, and if we click on that, we can see that all the white things have to be very reflective, and all the dark things have to be non-reflective at all. And as you can see already, it is inverted. So what we are going to do is we're going to tap tab and type in file. And here we're going to file texture. And we take that one, and if we click on the file texture, on file 7 in this case, we are presented with this little dialog on the right. As earlier, we can just click on that little button, little folder button, and choose the gloss texture. And we're going to take that out color and punch it into, oh dear, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? It doesn't work because all the green ones, green ones here only take grayscale value, which is, of course, white to black. But what our file is in here is it automatically creates a RGB texture. And as it is in a black and white image, all channels are the same, R, G, and B, and so we are taking out R, G, or B and piping that in the specular roughness. And if we're now going to activate our render engine again, we can see that it didn't work, or it did work, but as I said, we have to invert it. So to invert it, we're going to tap again and type in color correct. And here we can go for the AI color correct. AI stands for Arnold. We can just choose that. This time there's a red input, so we can only take the full out color, pipe that in, take our out color red, pipe that into the specular roughness, and inside of our color correct, we can just click on that little invert button. And if we now click on rendering again, we can see that it looks correct now, as the glasses are reflective, as we can see, and the case isn't, as this case is not supposed to be reflective. So, but there's something else. So if we take a look at our shader, the very next thing that happens is transmission. And if I turn on the weight to 1, we can see that our object becomes completely transmissive, which is another term for it becomes glass. And well, while there are some cases on this object, or some spaces on that object where it is glass, namely the glasses part of the glasses, the whole object doesn't need to be glasses or be glass. So we are going to turn down that weight and click on that little texture button right here and select file again, and then we're going to select transmission. And if we do so, we can see that inside of our node editor, this object or this file has been automatically created for us. We could have, of course, also included it all inside of our Hypershade. So if I restart our render engine, we can see that nothing really has changed. Because what we have to do is we have to click on alpha as luminance, and when we do that, the problem which I explained earlier, that all the values, or this texture is an RGB or color value, which gets piped into our Roughness channel, which doesn't work. So we have to click on alpha as luminance, which is the same as taking that red value, or if that is clicked on, we can also use the out alpha. But to keep it consistent, we can also just take the out R. It's the same effect, as you can see. And now our glasses are looking very promising right now, as the inside of the glasses is actual glass and the rest isn't. Okay. If we now click on our material again, subsurface is if you have an object which is like skin. Coat means if you, for example, have some sort of well, different specular value assigned on top of it. For example, with a car, there are usually two reflective values. We don't need that. Emission is if the object is shiny. So if we would pump that up, the object would shine white or would emit a color, or would be essentially be a light source. Thin film is for something like oil, or for a piece of paper which lets light shine through it. But we are going to focus on geometry. And in geometry, what we are going to do is we are going to assign a bump map. We can do that in here, but for the sake of learning, we're going to do that inside of the Hypershade view. So what we're going to do is we're going to press Tab, and we of course want to add a file again. And this file, in this case, is going to be our normal map, which looks like this. Load that in. And the render engine Arnold needs another node, which is between our file and the material, because Arnold doesn't know that this one is a normal node or a normal map, because a normal map needs some sort of different algorithm. So what we are going to do, we are going to type in normal map, and here we go, the AI normal map. We are going to get that color into the input and the out value in our normal camera. And if I now go to press play again, we can see that we have some structure where there wasn't any in the first place, especially on the inside of our case. We can see that there is now some sort of, well, fabric in there. And of course the logo on the case is now stenciled in. Alright, here we go. This is how you would texture a pair of glasses in a case. And if you want to make it perfect, we can click on our sky and turn off our camera value, and then we just have our glasses. And as I said, inside of the material editor of the materials I gave to you, there are a few objects which you can try out, some texturing, and I know it seems very complicated at first, but it really isn't, and I'm just going to encourage you to try it out, see how it works.